today we're going to be talking about the Vietnam War, a war with guns, hidden tunnels, and most importantly, plants. Lots and lots of plants.
The dense foliage played an important part in the war. The war was fought largely using guerrilla warfare tactics, which took advantage of the dense jungles in Vietnam.
Guerrilla?
Now I know what you're thinking, but guerrilla warfare does not mean that guerrillas fought in the war, nor does it mean that the Vietnam War was anything like Planet of the Apes.
Guerrilla warfare refers to an irregular style of combat in which smaller groups of soldiers, such as paramilitary personnel and armed civilians, use military tactics such as ambush, sabotage, hit and run, and mobility to fight a larger and less mobile army.
Wasn't the Vietnam War during the Cold War, and wasn't it between the US and the USSR?
Well, yes, but actually no. To avoid directly declaring war against each other, the USSR and the US fought battles through other nations called satellite battles, and this is exactly what they did in Vietnam.
Vietnam was originally ruled by China from 3 BC until 42 AD, and then two more times from 47 to 543, and from 609 to 938. They then went through 10 dynasties from 939 to 1883. They were then colonized by France in 1884 until right before World War II. During World War II, Japan took control of the nation, but that didn't last very long.
After Japan surrendered, Vietnam was given the opportunity to determine its own government. While France tried to gain control once again, Ngo Dinh Diem established a stable government in the country.
Amidst this chaos in February 1930, a communist leader, Ho Chi Minh, founded the Indo-Chinese Communist Party in Hong Kong. Not a whole lot of effort went into the name. In fact, you could say it was quite minimal.
Wow, that joke was so cheesy.
Many people felt commonality with Minh because he looked and dressed like them, gaining him lots of popularity.
Once in power, Minh utilized the Viet Minh, a guerrilla army that was used to fight the Japanese occupation. The Viet Minh were able to seize control of Vietnam, and on September 2nd, 1945, Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnam's independence and tried to impose his communist ideals.
However, the US was not about to let another country fall to communism, and ensured that Diem and his government would remain in control. According to President Kennedy's domino theory, since countries such as China had recently undergone a communist revolution, Vietnam would be similarly successful. Supporting the democratic leader, capitalist leader, Diem seemed like the only option to preserve democracy and capitalism in Vietnam. Religious discrimination and lack of freedom of speech were also parts of Diem's government. And basically, this guy was a jerk.
Diem was corrupt, but because Kennedy did not want to become fully involved in the war, he ordered the FBI to start a military coup, which worked, second time's the charm, and managed to assassinate Diem and his brother, Ngo Dinh Nhu.
This, however, resulted in a power vacuum, which resulted in an unstable South and would eventually lead to the US's downfall.
Now it's time for the secret compartment. What do we have here? Looks like a detonator for C4, also known as Composite 4, which was designed in 1956, weighing about 1.25 pounds, and it had lots of destructive capabilities.
There were 5 major battles in the Vietnam War: the Battle of La Drang Valley, the Battle of Khe Sanh, the Tet Offensive, Hamburger Hill, and the Fall of Saigon.
First of the 5 major battles was the Battle of La Drang between the US and North Vietnamese forces. Although the US suffered heavy casualties, the battle was marked as a victory, marking a significant event for both sides of the battle. The US learned that they could cause significant damage by fighting a war of attrition, where the US forces tried to wear down the communists. The North Vietnamese learned that they could avoid airstrikes and artillery strikes if they stayed very close to the Americans.
The Battle of Khe Sanh lasted nearly 3 months in 1968. The US placed troops along the Quang Tri province of North Vietnam. However, the North Vietnamese troops bombarded all the American troops and attacked them from all angles. The US was left vulnerable and had to airlift troops out of the Quang Tri province. And this was clearly an act of surrender, thus losing the Americans the battle and making this big significant battle in the war.
The Tet Offensive was a system of attacks on over 100 South Vietnamese cities by the north. Tet is the celebration of the new lunar year in Vietnam, and in the past years of the war, it was a day of peace. This year, however, the North Vietnamese general took a page out of George Washington's book and attacked on this holiday. These battles turned the American perspective on the war and started a movement in America to withdraw from the war.
Hamburger Hill was sadly quite a misnomer. On the hill, instead of juicy, nice hamburgers, there were the entrenched North Vietnamese on South Vietnam soil. The joint American and South Vietnamese troops were ordered to remove these troops on May 19, 1969. The assault began. The hill, however, was taken by the U.S., but they were asked to withdraw their forces, and this led to an increasing support to end the war.
On April 30th, 1975, Communist North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong forces captured the South Vietnamese capital of Saigon. Saigon is right here in democratic South Vietnam, forcing the South Vietnamese to surrender and bringing an end to the Vietnam War.
Now it's time for the open letter. Today we have a letter to Senator Tom, sent by Air Force Reserve Dr. James Clary. When we initiated the herbicide program in the 1960s, we were aware of the potential for damage due to dioxin contamination in the herbicide. However, because the material was to be used on the enemy, none of us were overly concerned. We never considered a scenario in which our own personnel would become contaminated with the herbicide.
Well, what does that all mean? Let's go to the thought bubble.
The herbicide in the letter refers to Operation Ranchan, an herbicide program most commonly known as Agent Orange. The name is derived from the color of the barrels that the herbicide was transported in.
The operation was quite disastrous. While being adept at destroying the Viet Cong's cover, it also had horrible effects on everyone.
Despite the company that supplied the herbicide's knowledge of its toxicity and the U.S. knowledge as shown by our mystery letter, the U.S. went through with the operation, causing repugnant effects.
About 400,000 deaths are reported to be caused by the herbicide, with the additional Vietnamese reports of around 2 million with cancer or other diseases, as well as 500,000 with birth defects. The toxin also affected the U.S. troops, who then brought it home, causing a number of reports of birth defects in the U.S.
Thank you, Thought Bubble. President Nixon pulled the United States out of the Vietnam War on March 29, 1973, after many young American lives were lost, and after many protests from the U.S. people.
This was the first war in American history that the U.S. had lost, and it has cast a dark shadow on the history of our country. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time on Crash Course.